Hi, I'm Megan and welcome to my kitchen. In today's video, I'm going to share 4 recipes with you of things that we often buy from the store, but that we can totally make at home ourselves from scratch. Now, there's nothing at all wrong with buying these things from the store, but it's just good knowledge to be able to make them yourselves at home in case, budget-wise, that's better for you, or you don't want to run to the store just for one item, or you just want to make it yourself. Now, I did a similar video a couple months or so ago, and I had a lot of people ask me to do more of these types of videos, so I'm not an expert by any means. We're going to learn together. I'm trying to expand my horizons and get back to, just knowing how to make things from scratch myself. So let's learn together. We're going to start out by making some homemade pepper jelly. Now, this is a small batch pepper jelly, so you don't need a lot of fancy canning equipment. I will have the recipe linked down in the description box below for you. Here are the ingredients we're going to need. I'm using granulated sugar, apple cider vinegar, red bell pepper, some pectin, and jalapenos. So for the peppers, I washed them really well, let them dry. I removed the seeds and membranes, and I just gave them a rough chop. Now, I didn't feel like getting out my big food processor. I'm using this little one, so I'm going to do these in batches. If you have a larger food processor, you can use that, of course. If you don't have them, no worries. You can just finely mince them by hand. It might take you a little while, but no worries. You can still do it. So like I said, just adding these in batches, pulsing them a few times until they are pretty well minced, and then I'm going to add them to a bowl. And a quick note, you don't want to puree the peppers, you just want to mince them really well. So in this saucepan, I'm going to add in my minced bell and jalapeno peppers. I'm also going to add in the apple cider vinegar as well as the granulated sugar, and I'm going to give that a really good stir. I'm going to turn the stove on to medium heat, and then we're going to bring this to a boil, and I am going to come through and give this a stir every so often. While that's coming to a boil, to a separate small saucepan, I'm going to add in the water as well as the pectin. I'm going to give that a stir and then turn this on medium heat. We're going to bring this to a boil, and we're going to stir this constantly while it's coming up to a boil. Once it comes to a boil, we're going to let it boil for 1 minute. After 1 minute, I turn the heat off, and we are going to slowly add in the pectin mixture to that pepper mixture, stirring it really, really well. We're going to bring this back up to a boil and boil this for 3 minutes, and during these 3 minutes, don't stir it, just leave it alone. After 3 minutes, we're going to remove this from the heat, and then you want to take a little spoon and skim the foam off the top if it needs it. If you don't really have a lot of foam, don't worry about it. I didn't have a ton, so I just took my little wooden spoon and skimmed the foam off of it. So now we're ready to put this into our jars. So I washed these jars with some soapy hot water, let them air dry, and then I did I don't know what you call it in the canning world, but I poured some boiling water into the jars for like 10 minutes, poured the water out, and then dried them. So I'm just going to pour that mixture into the jars using a canning funnel, and then that's pretty much it. You're going to cover these with lids and bands and then let them sit at room temperature for 24 hours. And a quick note, I don't believe the recipe said that you needed to pour the boiling water into the jars, let it sit for 10 minutes and pour it out like I did. But when I've made small batch like strawberry jelly and other berry jellies, the recipes have said to do that. So I did it here. Like I said, I don't know that it's necessary or not. We're kind of learning together. So if you know more about canning than I do, let me know down below if that's a necessary step here. But I just went ahead and did it just to be on the safe side. Now, I noticed after a couple hours that the peppers had kind of risen to the top. So I just took a butter knife and gave the jam a little stir, placed the lids back on it, and that redistributed the peppers. Now, y'all, I was in the wrong decade. I put 2013 on here. That is not, it was this year. I showed this in another video, and somebody was like, I hope you didn't use 10-year-old jam. And I'm like, no, I just made it. So disregard that. But this was a yummy pepper jelly. You have so many uses for this. This makes great, obviously, with, cream cheese and crackers. This is great on sandwiches. You can add a little scoop of the pepper jelly to meatballs or little smokies, like the barbecue ones you make in the crock pot. And with Christmas coming up, this would be a great gift. It's really easy to make, pretty budget friendly, and it's really really festive with the red and green. So if you are, wanting some Christmas gifts or just to make it for yourself, I recommend you give this recipe a try. It made 3 of the little half pint size jars for me. So you could easily double or triple this recipe, depending on how many people you wanted to make this for. Next, we're going to make some hummus. Now, I've been wanting to try to make my own hummus for years. I don't know why I haven't done it yet. I guess maybe I was just intimidated by it for some reason. I looked at many different recipes on how to make hummus, watched some different videos, and I kind of used my own version, taking different things from many different recipes, but I'll link a recipe or two that I used as inspiration down below, and I'll also put the measurements that I ended up using. So here's what I'm going to use for my hummus. I've got salt, cumin, smoked paprika, chickpeas or garbanzo beans, some tahini. Now, if you're not familiar with this is basically like a sesame paste or sesame butter. Think about like peanut butter, but made from sesame seeds. I've got olive oil, baking soda, fresh garlic, and lemon. Several of the recipes that I looked at suggested doing an extra step to make the hummus a little bit more smooth, so I decided to give that a try. So you want to take your canned garbanzo beans, drain and rinse them, and then we're going to add them to a bowl. Add some warm water and then a little baking soda. I'm going to give that a little stir, and then you want to let this sit for about 5 to 10 minutes or so. And according to what I read, it supposedly makes the beans a little more tender, and it helps remove that like husk from the bean. So once you've done that, you can just go from there with the beans, or you can take the beans and put them on a kitchen towel and then kind of roll them in the kitchen towel to get those extra husks off. Now, really the only kind of quote-unquote special equipment you need here is a blender or food processor. We're going to add those chickpeas there. I saw several recipes suggest adding a couple tablespoons of ice water, again, to make it more smooth. So I'm going to give that a try. And now we're going to add the tahini. Now, just like with peanut butter, it was kind of separated from the paste part and the oil. So I just gave it a stir. Added in the tahini, and then we're going to add in our fresh garlic. Next, I'm adding in the cumin and salt. And then last but not least, I'm going to add in some olive oil and fresh lemon juice. Now, hummus, this is just a basic recipe. You can absolutely flavor this however you want. You could do chipotle, you could do roasted red peppers, you could do sweet chili sauce, you could add in some avocados, some beets, some different vegetables. And flavor-wise, whatever spices, totally make this your own. So all we're going to do is process that until it is a smooth consistency. I did have to add in a couple extra tablespoons of olive oil. That may have just been personal preference. Give it a taste, adjust the salt, lemon juice to your taste, and then that's it. We're ready to serve this up. So I just placed this into a shallow dish, spread it out. I'm going to drizzle it with a little bit of olive oil, and then I'm using some smoked paprika. That's it. So easy, and this was delicious. This was so good. I served this up with some garlic and herb pita crisps along with some fresh veggies, and then we also used this to make some veggie wraps. So we added like the hummus, some grilled tofu, some brown rice, all kinds of yumminess, and had wraps in it, and this was so good. I can't wait to make this again and try it with different flavors. Now, I'm sure you're like me and you have seen this no-knead rustic bread all over YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, and I have been so intrigued by it. I finally decided to give it a try, and y'all, the hype is real. This was so ridiculously easy, and it was delicious. It was so good. In fact, this evening I'm going into my kitchen and making another batch of this because it was delicious and it was easy. So if you're new to baking, if you're new to like making homemade breads, try this recipe. You'll love it. Now, just like with the hummus, I looked at lots of different recipes, watched lots of different YouTube videos and Instagram videos, and kind of came up with my own. I will put that in the description box and link a couple of the recipes that I took inspiration from. First up, you need some salt, and you just want to use Plano iodized table salt here. We've got some all-purpose flour. You don't have to have bread flour or anything like that, just regular all-purpose flour, some granulated sugar, warm water. And I've mentioned this in one of my previous videos when I was making pizza crust. It's just a personal irritation for me when people say like warm water, because I feel like that's really subjective. So I looked up on on Google, and Google suggested the warm water being at about 115 degrees. And then we're also going to need some yeast. You just need some active dry yeast. To a large bowl, I'm going to sprinkle in my yeast, followed by the granulated sugar and then the warm water. Now, like I said, I'm fairly new to baking, like with yeasted doughs, and so I wanted to make sure that I had the temperature warm like it should be. If it's too cold, your yeast won't activate. If it's too hot, you'll kill your yeast. So I just took a couple seconds and used my thermometer to check that temperature, and it was fine. So I'm going to give that a stir, and then you're going to set this to the side for about 5 to 10 minutes or so until it is foamy and it looks like this. So it becomes kind of cloudy and you'll see little bubbles, and that's good. That means your yeast is alive and it's, causing that gas. So I'm going to give this a stir, and then we're going to add in the flour and salt. And a couple quick notes. One thing that I loved about this recipe is it made one loaf, which was perfect for the two of us. And as I was looking at these recipes, I saw all kinds of other recipes for making different flavors of this bread. Like I saw a rosemary parmesan, which just sounds delicious. And so I can't wait to try different variations of this bread. So all you're going to do is stir this until a dough starts to form, and it took no time at all. If it's really, really sticky, you can add the flour about a quarter cup or so at a time. But as you can see here, my dough is formed. It's a little sticky. You could move this to a separate bowl that is greased, but I'm just going to kind of move it to the side and grease it. You're going to cover this with a clean kitchen towel or some plastic wrap, and you want to let this rise. Now, different recipes varied from a couple hours to 18 hours to 24 hours. I let mine rise for about, I think it was right at 4.5 hours, and it was perfect. So I would say at least 3 or 4, but I'm sure if you let it rise overnight, that would turn out even better. Now, you might be looking at this right now and seeing a board and some flour and thinking, Megan, you said no kneading. There is no kneading, I promise. All we're going to do is just shape it. I sprinkled just a little flour on the cutting board. You could also do it on your clean kitchen counter, sprinkling a little flour on top on my hands, and all I'm going to do is just form that into a ball. You do not want to overmix this or overwork it at all. Now I've got some parchment paper. I'm going to add a little sprinkling of flour. I'm going to add my dough ball to the parchment paper. This just kind of helps you get it out of the Dutch oven easier. And then I'm going to take a knife and just score a couple lines on the top. You can do different designs, whatever you'd like to do. I just did like a little crisscross. Now, I had my Dutch oven. I placed it into a cold oven. I turned the oven to 450 degrees, and I let that Dutch oven with the lid heat up while the oven was heating up. So then you want to carefully add in your parchment paper and dough to that Dutch oven, but be careful, this is going to be hot. We're going to place this into the preheated oven, and we're going to bake this covered for 30 minutes. After 30 minutes, this is what it looked like. We're going to bake this another 15 or 20 minutes or so until it is golden brown. And using a thermometer, the internal temperature of the bread should be anywhere between about 195 degrees and 210 degrees. That's just per Google. I just looked it up online. So you can see here, this was at like 209, 210, and it was perfect. So we are going to remove this, and then you want to let this cool. And look at this. Looks like it came from a bakery, if I do say so myself. It looks so just rustic and homemade and fancy. And you guys saw, you need like really no special equipment. You don't even need a stand mixer. All you need is really a Dutch oven, a couple simple ingredients, and that's it. And you guys, look at how like soft and fluffy the inside is, and the outside is nice and crusty. This was just delicious. And Gary just kept raving about it. He was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. So I highly recommend this recipe. I know a lot of times we see these recipes, that go viral, and we're like, are they really that good? Or, and you guys, I mean it when I say I will definitely make this over and over again. And I can't wait to try out, different versions of this. Like I think cheddar jalapeno, or I mentioned the Parmesan and rosemary would be good. And it just plain by itself, delicious. Now, last but not least, I think maybe because I was looking up homemade bread recipes, I started seeing homemade butter recipes like everywhere. And so I thought, you know what, if we're going to do homemade bread, we might as well just go all out and do homemade butter. What could be better than homemade bread and homemade butter? This was another super simple recipe, just a couple of ingredients. You don't need really any fancy equipment. A stand mixer is helpful. You can also do this using a hand mixer, or if you really want to work on building your arm muscles, you could just do it with a whisk. But 2 ingredients, we're just going to need some heavy cream. Yes, it has to be heavy cream. And then some salt if you want to do salted butter. If you want to do unsalted butter, no salt. I'm adding the cream to my stand mixer, and you do want to use a splash guard or cover your bowl with a kitchen towel because the cream flies everywhere. We're going to turn this on low to start out with and then just gradually increase it to high. Now, some of the recipes that I saw said that theirs took like 5 minutes. Mine took maybe 15 or 20 minutes. That may be, though, because I didn't have it up as high as my stand mixer would go. But either way, you just want to mix this until it basically forms into butter. I don't know how else to explain it, but let me show you the different stages of it. So first, it is going to look like whipped cream. If you've ever made homemade whipped cream, you know it's going to be white and fluffy. You're just going to keep going, and then it will eventually turn yellow and get even thicker, and you'll start to recognize, hey, that's kind of looking like butter. Keep going, and then you'll see it turn into kind of a sloshy mess like this. It's buttermilk with a few little chunks of butter. Keep going, and you will see eventually the butter separating from the buttermilk. So once it's there, we are going to pour off that buttermilk, and don't throw that away. That's going to make some delicious biscuits or cornbread. Use it. It's buttermilk, so just use it, you know, however you would do that. Maybe some homemade ranch dressing. Here's what it looked like. So as you can see, we've got the liquid and the butter, and we're going to pour that through a fine mesh strainer. Now, I saw several different techniques to get all of the buttermilk out of the butter. I saw some people just place the butter into a clean dish towel and give it a really good squeeze. Some people squeezed it in a paper towel. I saw some people add it to a bowl of cold ice water, massage the butter, and then they drain off the water, add some more cold ice water, massage the butter, and keep going until it ran clear. I found personally that just pressing it through the fine mesh strainer, removed as much of the butter as I wanted. So I stirred in some salt while I was doing that, and that's it. You can form it into whatever shape you like. I just rolled it up in some parchment paper, and then you want to pop this into the refrigerator. And the recipe did say to store this in the fridge, and when you go to use it, obviously, bring it out a few minutes before so it gets nice and soft. Use this wherever you'd use butter. On the homemade bread that we just made, toast, some biscuits, whatever recipes. This was delicious, and it was really easy. Now, I'm not suggesting by any means you only make your own homemade butter from scratch every single time going forward, but it was, fun to do. I'll definitely try it again, maybe for special occasions. And this is another thing with Christmas coming up. I think this would be a really great homemade gift to give to people, either just plain as is or to do a flavored butter, like with some pretty packaging and ribbon. I think it would make a really nice Christmas gift. All right, that is it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you liked this video. If you did, hit the thumbs up button below and subscribe to my channel if you're not already. I hope you have a great rest of the day. Bye-bye.